first trick you're going to need to know is how do you get this lifted up? You may think that's funny, but if you don't know how to do it, you may get it back. You may feel helpless that you can't start your project. You know, because this is actually in the locked position. You got to take this little button here, and sometimes it doesn't work very well. You got to kind of push down on this, take a little bit of the slack off, just kind of wedge on it and pull it out. See, I thought I had it. There. Got to pull it out far enough. Now this will come up here like this, see? That's your first little trick to know. Let's kind of get acquainted with this saw. I've not used this particular saw before. I'm borrowing this saw from somebody. And you should be able to push this down. Let's see if I can loosen that up. There you go. Okay, push that down, and then see you can swivel this to whatever degrees you want, which is kind of cool. And it locks into place at 0. Let's see where the next one is. 22.5. And then I think at 45 it snaps too. Yeah. Okay, that snaps, and then you don't have to lock this handle down. But any other degrees, if you want, let's say 5 degrees, you can set it there. Then you've got to tighten this handle down to keep this blade from moving, keep this table from moving. Do you see what I mean? Always make sure you do that on any part where it doesn't snap down into place. And I'm glad I checked this because it was on 2 degrees when I first looked at it. The last thing you want to do is when you start cutting your wood is, let's say it's on 2 degrees and you got it all set down. You start cutting it, you're not going to have square ends. So when you butt it up against a wall, it's not going to fit properly, will it? Okay, so loosen that up and snap that into place. Now maybe he had it at 2 degrees for a reason. Maybe this table is out of whack. So, you know, before I start, I'll probably take a square and set it up, do one cut, and make sure that it's nice and straight before I start cutting all my materials. Then I'll have to compensate. But generally, if this snaps into place at 0, like that, then you know that's going to be a perfect 90-degree cut. Now here's something cool this saw has that some other saws don't have. You've got this handle back here. You've got to loosen that up. Unscrew that a little bit. And then this should fold down, see? How this folds down at an angle. That's pretty slick, huh? Then you can tighten it back up at whatever angle you want. You look at that down there. Then you can cut your wood at an angle. And you might have to do that depending how tall your baseboard is or anything like that. So you can put the table at an angle, you can flip the saw over at an angle, and work with it like that. And this pops back up. Now to get a 45, see, it's not going over far enough before it's hitting this little table edge. Well, on that table, there's a little set screw on the side of it. I can slide that back and get it out of the way. I think you can see that. You can get that out of the way. So then when you do 45s, loosen that up. Kick that all the way down at a 45, and it kind of sets into place. This one doesn't notch and set in any certain areas. It's got a definite stop at 0 and a definite stop at 45. So if I'm going to do a 45-degree cut, I can let it stop. I'll still check it, it looks fine, and I can tighten that up. And I want to make sure that this little table extension on this side is over far enough so when I push my blade down, it's not going to hit it. Kind of awkward to cut this way, but you know, the trim comes out really nice at the times you need to angle your blade over, and it only flops over on the left-hand side. You can't take this and flop it over to the right. So every time you cut, you have to cut it this way. So sometimes you have to figure out on your trim, okay, how am I going to cut those angles? If you got an angle on both ends, let's say, you got to think about it a little bit before you start cutting your material. Now in this saw here, here's the outlet where the dust is going to come out, a lot of it. Now this should have a dust bag on it. And then, you know, you could cut inside a house, you know, and it's not going to put out that much dust. You're still going to have some dust on the saw blade when you're doing it like that, but because I'm borrowing this from somebody and it doesn't have a dust bag, of course I've got to leave it outside, because this is just going to keep flying out that way every time I make a cut. All right? Keep your dust to a minimum around your project, especially, like I said, if we've got hardwood floor down. Even if I had a dust bag, I think I would still cut outside, depending where I'm at. If I'm up on a second floor and I've got to cut the trim and do the baseboard and all that kind of stuff, I might think twice about it. I might bag off an area or just kind of deal with it, make sure I have a dust bag on there and clean up the best I can when I get done. You know, so think about your project and work accordingly.